Shalom. Last night I had a Torah study with some friends. We talked about the current Parasha, Tazria. This week it's a double Parasha, Tazria, Mitzorah. Very appropriate for our times, I think. We talked how, according to the Torah, when someone was affected by that invisible and mysterious condition called leprosy, which of course has nothing to do with the disease, the skin disease we call leprosy today. That's why I call it a condition. When someone was affected by that invisible and mysterious condition, the local priest, which in those days also represented civic government authority, ordered that person to be quarantined. That person had to quarantine themselves from their loved ones, which while doing it reluctantly, they did it voluntarily, more or less, as an act of obedience to the Torah, the act of being more concerned for the welfare of others than for their own. This person would then have to stay quarantined either by themselves or with others like them, until such a time when he or she would be healed and declared clean of ritual contamination by a priest, which in the understanding of the day meant possibly never. Because the one who was promised to come with a cure for that sort of contamination, called in the Bible leprosy, was the Messiah. As we were studying and reading, I couldn't help but draw comparisons with the times that we presently face through our situation with COVID-19. As the people infected with Tazria or ritual contamination, we are today faced with an invisible enemy which the medical and civic authorities say require us to quarantine ourselves as an act of obedience to Torah, really, to care about others more than about ourselves, which we also do reluctantly but voluntarily, more or less. In a world without temple, altar, offerings, and priesthood, we have a real difficulty in relating to this part of the text in Leviticus when we read it every year. It seems completely irrelevant. But this year we are given an unparalleled opportunity to understand how this was lived in Bible times. This year it seemed good that for Hashem to give us an object lesson on the seriousness of obedience to the Torah. That it's not always about good feelings and the things we want to do. As I kept thinking about these lines, I couldn't help but realize how there was more to it. Because another situation that we find ourselves with today is that many of us cannot work. A whole segment of our population is out of work and have to live of their reserves or even of the reserves of others. This again made me think of another situation, one that we will find very soon as we continue reading in the book of Leviticus. That is the situation of Jubilees. During the Jubilee, a part of the population, the farmers, those that grew food, was not supposed to work. This created a problem for them, a financial problem, but also disrupted the country's food supply as well as international trade. As a result, people were supposed to eat of their reserves or of the reserves of others. That was such a difficult commandment to observe that Israel mostly didn't do it. Actually, every 50 years, there would be 2 years of Jubilee. Not 1 year, but 2 years of Jubilee. In Israel in those days, in the days of prophet Jeremiah, they didn't want to obey God and stop amassing wealth. As a result, they were exiled for 70 years so that, as Jeremiah says, the land could have her Shabbats. So again, we are given an unparalleled opportunity to experience what it truly means to live by the Bible, to understand what our fathers, that we often criticize for being unwilling to obey, were faced with. Many speculations are made about the provenance and origins of COVID-19, but one thing is certain, is that it is here in all its strength, and it can only be here by the permission of Hashem. He says, I, Hashem, create life and death. I create good and evil. He does not transfer the blame to somebody else. He takes the blame. I did it. If we want to know why, we need to talk with him. But as of now, the situation has provoked the priests of the medical profession to tell us to quarantine, a move supported by our civic authorities. Now the question is, are we today as unwilling to have our lives disrupted just as Israel was in the days of Jeremiah? Are we today unwilling to let Hashem push us to reevaluate our priorities by stopping our feverish activities for a short time? We only have to do it for 1, 2, 3 months. They had to do it for a year, and sometime 2 years. Just something to ponder about as we approach Shabbat. Shalom.